episode of Chillin with the Pool. That's right, I'm your host with the most, Pirate Master Deadpool Supreme, here to bring you a special coverage of the latest Marvel character. This kid right here. His name is Spider-Boy. That's right, or as the other webheads tend to call him, the Webless Wonder. Introduced at the tail end of the last Spider-Verse event, i.e., end of the Spider-Verse for some odd reason, then Bailey Briggs has risen up in popularity as of recent years. And as you can see, Spider-Boy is a ton of fun that bursts with quirky visual storytelling that pleases fans old and new. Well, I mean, it has been debatable, but I've started reading him, and I actually feel kind of bad for the kid. I'll get into more of that in a minute, but it's like, this is like perfect for every like elementary schooler and middle schooler, because besides, what kid hasn't dreamed of becoming a superhero? I mean, seriously, it's a visualization that's as old as time itself. So, let's get into the book, shall we? The story starts out with Bailey Briggs exploring New York, or Earth 616 as you prefer. He's trying to rediscover who he is and what his place in the grand scheme of things actually is. Yes, he claims that he's been here longer for about 3 years or so. However, it is technically kind of debatable and everything, but you know, that's kind of par for the course. Now, I've never been one of the whole "I've been here all along" trope. I mean, the trope can only go so far. But if you take away that and separate him from Spider-Man, his kid's actually it's not bad. Now, for this first issue here, I'm not really a fan of the artwork by Humberto Ramos, as it were, because I think it kind of looks like, you know, jagged and everything. But the story and how it's written so far is not so bad. I mean, look at that. I mean, look at Bailey here. He's a nice, decent-looking kid. I mean, red hair and everything. He looks just like your typical average kid, huh? This kid. Yes. Since he's been gone, it's like I think. Let's see. Oh yeah, Bailey's overall arcing story is just basically is him trying to make people remember who he was. But if you take that away and just like replace it with the amnesia, just like swap it out for a classic amnesia story, then it actually is pretty decent in the line of work. Yes, it's a nice little tech backpack that he has. It displays his suit and everything. He lives at Feast, so you can't help but feel bad for the kid. I mean, he's all he is just trying to look for his mom. I mean that kind of pretty much tugs at the heartstrings. I mean, he's like what, less than 8 or 10 years old, and already he has to deal with so much on his plate. No kid should have to go through this. And apparently, he has a brand new superpower, which involves psychic spider visions, which is actually kind of a new, pretty cool idea. It means he can sense who's actually in danger. So forget spider sense. Then Bailey Briggs has spider vision, and everything. So he ends up making a new friend. And check it out. I mean, he takes out Mr. Negative's inner demons. Demons, the street gang that works for the Magia. So I think it's actually just pretty cool. I mean, a 10-year-old kid going up against some professional Japanese Yakuza members. And everything. And stuff like that. And, as a result, he ends up making a new friend. Her name is Christina Zhu. X-U. Yeah, Zoo. I think I'm pronouncing it right. Sorry for any mispronunciations. I don't. Just trying to make sure I do it right. Anyway, he ends up making a new friend that becomes a main supporting character of his supporting cast. Hell, I mean, this kid is he's you can tell he's new at this because he actually calls a timeout, and the inner demons are like, did he seriously just call a timeout? He's like, oh no, I'm not used to fighting little kids. So it just goes to show that no bad guys actually want to fight children. I mean, some of them do have standards. Villains do have standards, and then after a while, some villains are like, you know what, screw this, I'm fighting kids. So like, so it's like, I mean, how do I put this? You know, there are some villains, you know, that the likable ones and the ones that are like pure evil and everything, and I'm kind of juxtaposed to like, opposed to either side. I mean, one, you got to give them to the likable ones because they're like, I don't want to hit kids because I mean, I was a kid once too, and it's like, really, is this where my life's going right now? And then you have the other one who will literally fight whoever, regardless of age, as long as they get their way. So it's just kind of a juxtaposable coin toss in the grand scheme of things. And so he has Christina hand over this key that the inner demons are after. So we know what he does. He just bends it up and throws it away. He says, yeah, it's like, yeah, that, and if it takes 1,000 years, you'll live to regret, blah, blah, blah. He's like, I've heard it all from you before. Or, so it's basically, he's just basically like commenting on the whole standard bad guys threat and empty threats and everything. They're like, these guys are so pissed. It's like, you'll pay for interfering with our plans. Oh, boring. And I think I like this scene right over here. It's like with Briggs, and it's like, she tells him that he's definitely not alone, and he actually gets accepted by Christina Zhu and her parents. I think that's just so purely wholesome and everything. I mean, it's just even without the whole amnesia thing. I mean, just a little kid without his mom and everything, and just being adopted by a found family is just so sweet. And then, of course, you got this crazy one. It's like, sorry, friends, got a little tickle in my throat. It's like looking at him. This guy looks like a foghorn leghorn if he was actually human. If he was human, it's like you could just, I could practically just imagine him with a southern accent. It's like cock-a-doodle. I say cock-a-doodle-doo. And of course, then you have this one. The lady here you see here is called Madame Monstrosity, who's apparently the mother of Harlan Stillwell and Farley Stillwell. Those are the guys. If you don't know, for long-time Spider-Man viewers, those are the two scientists, or I think one of the two scientists, that ended up helped Mac Gargan become the Scorpion, one of Spider-Man's longtime foes. You can tell that there is a lot the whole humanimals or animen sort of thing. I think she and the High Evolutionary would have definitely gotten along very swimmingly. And then, of course, you got Dr. Shannon Stillwell of Empire Unlimited. I mean, I swear to God, some of these villains in big-wig companies, it's like, I get that the whole corporation and capitalism thing is kind of a whole evil in and of itself, but it's like, but like, really? I mean, don't you think it's a bit of a stereotype at this point? I mean, seriously, anything can be a stereotype. It doesn't even have to be just people or racism, just saying. It's called occupational racism, like I said. And then you got let's see, Farley Stillwell was the guy who created the Scorpion, and then of course you got Harlan Stillwell, who ended up creating the actual human fly. And no, I'm not talking about the Jeff Goldblum one either. I'm actually talking about the guy who bonded himself in a fly costume. And then of course he supposedly died. So it's like, and Stillwell, called Madame Monstrosity. I mean, seriously, she and the High Evolutionary would definitely got on like a house on fire. I mean, they're just creating human animals and stuff like that. And I'm not talking just about the comics one, I'm talking about the MCU one too. I mean, she's pretty much got the whole research of, Madame Monstrosity. Seriously, she looks like something out of the 1800s, that getup. And I think, and of course, for full-on monsters, yada yada yada. And apparently, this is also one of Spider-Boy's latest powers. He can turn himself into a spider monster, just kind of like Kane, or Ben Reilly, or whoever, the angsty clone who ends up turning into a spider monster whenever to unleash his full power. So yeah. The newest issue, we end up seeing Spider-Boy and working alongside his supposed quote-unquote mentor Spider-Man take on Gutterball, a bowling ball-themed or bowling-themed supervillain with a bowling ball for a head, and that shoots pins and everything. Okay, I gotta admit, some of the new villains and stuff, this is actually getting pretty creative. I mean, look at Gutterball, and he's like shooting a bowling ball who shoots bowling pins. That's pretty creative if you ask me, and this is from a guy who used to bowl on his high school bowling team for a living, and nearly went to the state championship. Thank you very much. So he shoots bowling pins and ends up, and apparently you don't smash him in the head because his hand is an indestructible ball. Indestructible. It's like, yeah, this is what Marvel should be doing. Just, let the older villains and older heroes die and take a backseat so that way you can create brand new ones for the next generation. It's not that hard. You can just, any idea can be worth, venturing upwards if you, can be, like, a team of talented writers could turn a sewage plant of an idea into a gold mine of a success with a little time and effort taken with him. Speaking of which, I also want to look at Bailey Briggs' Spider costume. I mean, it's actually pretty good. I mean, the blue and red inverse, plus he's wearing the matching kicks, so it's like, it's pretty, his design-wise, it's actually pretty creative, especially with the secondary eyes on the other side. Like, if you can tell right here, those are extra eyes that reflect his whole actual, spider monster thing. So I think it's actually, pretty good. I mean, you could have missed the webbing, the lack of webbing, like you see on Spider-Man's costume, is is kind of different. But hey, at least it helps him stand out a little easier. And of course, you see how, Spider-Boy is here taking out Gutterball using bowling puns. I mean, seriously, it's It's like, that was very striking. Yeah, it's a shame he couldn't be spared. And he goes, enough with the bowling puns already. Just take me to prison. Just anything. Just take me to prison. Get me away from these two jokers. So yeah, it seems. So yeah, he says to the bowling alley is saved, and of course, but of course, Bailey ends up going through the exact same trauma that of being publicly and immediately discriminated against, just like how Peter was during the start of his. Life really is a cycle, people, and that's there's no doubt about it. And of course, now he says. Now, of course, this is where Peter ends up confronting his editor and actual boss, Robbie Robertson. But in my head canon, I just call him Rodney because, well, kind of name's a little bit too personal. But he's like saying, that's word you sat back for years, letting Jonah Jameson call him a menace and everything. I mean, come on. I mean, I know that Rodney's supposed to be the voice of reason, but come on. That definitely shows that he's definitely flawed. I mean, I know Jameson's pretty much a hot-headed blowhard. It's like, but seriously, Rodney, this guy right here, he was the real boss of the Daily Bugle. Longtime Spider-Man viewers could tell he was really running the show. Him and Betty Brant, both. It's like, you can deny it in the comments and stuff all you want, but it's pretty much all there is. So it's I mean, in the '90s cartoon, he actually helped create Tombstone, not personality, but just the whole physical appearance thing. So it's like, so Rodney's definitely not without his demons. So I'm just saying, but it's like Spider-Man has a point. I mean, you're calling Spider-Boy a monster? He's just a kid, like an actual 10-year-old kid. I mean, that's pretty low, even for a newspaper that's supposed to that disses on Spider people, even after J. Jonah Jameson retired. But in my headcanon, he's definitely snuffed it. And everything. So it's I got to admit, the artwork definitely improves within the second issue. You can tell the illustrators were definitely finding their footing and stuff with Humberto Ramos, but they moved on to the crystal clear stuff. I mean, how the penciling and the ink lining makes it look like almost like airbrushed and everything. I think it looks actually pretty cool. Empire. And you can tell that Bailey's relationship with Christine is actually starting to improve. I mean, they're actually becoming really good friends. And stuff like that. And Peter stops by every so often to check on him and even tell him the news. So it's like, so apparently they were offering him a chance, their newest hero, Spider-Boy. So I think that's a good sign. At least it shows he's still new to the Marvel universe and still learning his way around. So I think it's actually pretty nice, him getting his footing. It's like, if you separate him from the whole "I've been here all along" sort of scenario, he definitely is a standalone character. He's a very decent standalone character. Then, of course, you got this bitch, Madame Monstrosity and everything. I mean, seriously, she looks like something the Bride of Count Dracula and everything. So, I don't know. But yeah, anyway, so they're out here in front of the grand reopening of the bowling alley, and he says, let me have to present you with this. Oh, yeah, and he makes a joke about that being actually Gutterball's head, so even he has to draw his limits to, and everything. I mean, look at that. You can tell it's painted in his colors, like blue with hints of red and purplish undertones. That's actually pretty good, his own personal bowling ball. Side note, I actually used to have a personalized bowling ball back when I was in middle school and everything, but the finger holes got too small, and I ended up donating it to a friend of mine at my mom's work. She's gotten needless to say, she has gotten pretty good use out of it, so it was totally worth it. Then we get to meet another one of Spider-Boy's rogues gallery. You meet Gutterball, Madame Monstrosity, and then of course you got another one that'll be revealed shortly. Now, of course, Now, Bailey's story is just as tragic because, just like Rocket Raccoon in the MCU and/or in general, he was experimented on and genetically spliced with an actual spider. I mean, look at that. He's going through just so much and everything. It's like, and then he ends up meeting a friend of his, like around his age and stuff. And they start joking about the different animal combinations. It's like, haha, what do you get when they're definitely kid jokes and stuff like that, but you gotta admit, it's pretty quaint. He's like, what do you get when you cross a duck with a cow? Milk and quackers. or what do you get when you cross a porcupine with a turtle? A slowpoke. or a frog with a pig, a amphibian. They're definitely kids jokes, and definitely like kids, borderline dads jokes. But I think it's actually, but they're not bad. At least it shows that he's been actually making some other friends and stuff. And then you've got, and of course you got Madame Monstrosity, who pretty much kills this entire mood and takes his friend over to the. Ends up experimenting on him and turns him into a half rhino, half elephant called Helifino. The Pheno. So it's like basically a rhino and elephant, which is kind of ironic considering that they're both pachyderms. Fun fact. The more you know. we skip ahead and we find Bailey actually holding his own against the Helafino and everything, and it turns out he's actually very sentient. Now, it turns out that Bailey is one of Madame Monstrosity's creations, because he has this upside-down barcode printed on the back of his neck. 50, 3, and 1. That's just for printing it upside down, because I'm not going to turn the book upside down. So it's like it's Eli. It's like, how do you know my name? It's like, you don't remember, but it's my fault that you're a monster. So it's like, he kind of goes to the whole thing that Spider-Man feels like he creates his own rogues gallery to a certain degree, but yeah. And stuff. So yeah, there's basically there's basically that. But yeah, Helafino just basically stops and then just walks away and everything. After Bailey says, all that matters is what you think. You don't want to be a monster. Make a choice and don't be one. See, this is the kind of writing that solidifies Bailey as definitely the newest member of the spider mythos. Totem mythos. It's like, this is the kind of stuff that Spider-Man would say to his own rogues gallery members, because it's like, and as Cassie Lang, a.k.a. Stature from the MCU, would said to that world's MODOK, it's never too late to not be a dick. And as funny as it is, it's actually true. It's never too late to do the right thing. Not at all. There's no time limit or crunch on that. So instead, Helafino just drops him and then runs away, leaving him and Christine to pretty much recoil from the whole conundrum. And then of course you got Bailey and Christine teaming up with Squirrel Girl. I mean, who doesn't like a good old-fashioned Squirrel Girl team up? I swear, Squirrel Girl was always at her best whenever she had someone to bounce off of. I mean, it doesn't even matter who it is. She's just fun with everybody. She and Miss Marvel, a.k.a. Kamala Khan, are definitely the unstoppable pair. It's just like it's from, if you ever watched Marvel Rising, I loved it about them. They're like SpongeBob and Patrick, but more superheroic and surprisingly more competent, in a sense. And then, of course, we meet another one of Spider-Boy's Rogues Gallery. What's his name? Oh, yeah, what's his name? Check it out, keep something. Oh, yeah. Oh. Excuse me, this morning's breakfast. Anyway, Emilio Helio, otherwise known as the Balloon Man, is coming. He was exposed to a deadly source of helium and now has to wear wears that helmet to make him breathe. Kind of like Mr. Freeze, but without the overlapping emotional tragedy and the fact that he just wears helium instead of just cryogenic gas. It's Polymer X, which is basically, so it's pretty much just like. Oh yeah, and the funny thing about this guy is it's very much, his voice is very high pitched. It's like listening to Alvin it's like someone's listening to Alvin and the Chipmunks channel, like 24/7. You can't help but laugh, and you actually don't take him too seriously. But like most villains, he does not like being laughed at. So it's like rubbery wrath. Tell you, this is like something straight out of an old campy 60s cartoon. You know, like when they used to do like some really crazy crap and everything like that. And look, it's like Tippy Toe and Monkey Joe, and no, I'm not making those names up. Those actually are their official canon names, and keep in mind they're squirrels, so you know. So it's like unleashed a bit of laughing gas. Thank God it wasn't the Joker's laughing gas, otherwise they would be all smiles and pretty much dead. And stuff like that. So we're just gonna skip ahead. Oh yeah, and apparently this scene right here, like, oh, look at this. This for those of you who guys don't know, this guy right here is actually Forbush Man. He was named after Irving Forbush. He was a close friend of Stan Lee's from one of Stan's soapbox rants and everything. So that's kind of like a nice little wink to the source material and to all the Marvel stuff that had come before him. Like, this is Forbush Man. I think his powers are like kind of like fourth wall breaking, meta commentary, and kind of like what Deadpool and She-Hulk do, She-Hulk do, like break the fourth wall and all that jazz. This kind of issue, we'll skip ahead to this issue. Let's see, to continue on where we left off, because that's the thing I don't like. It's like it skips over the part 2 issue when it shouldn't to include for another comic and everything like this. But if you just swap the order around, then it's not really all that bad. So yeah, it's basically so apparently even Spider-Boy ends up working with Santa Claus. I mean, if that doesn't scream retro comic where superheroes team up with priceless holiday characters, then nothing else will. and stuff like that. So apparently, then we flash back to this comic where he celebrates his first Christmas over here, and some thief steals his phone. Now, what makes this phone so special? It's the only thing that he has left of his old life, plus his mom. So doesn't that just tug at the heartstrings? I mean, this kind of does have the makings of a classic Hallmark movie, but the one that actually is not generic and goes against the grain, one that's not bland as hell. Then he ends up teaming up with Captain America. So who doesn't love a good Captain America team up every so often? And of course, then he ends up, then they go against the villainous Taskmaster, who's a combat chameleon, meaning he can copy anybody's moves just from watching them fight. So he ends up stealing a super adaptoid for some kind of villainous project and everything. We'll just skip ahead to this other stuff right over here, and of course, this. So apparently he ends up doing the whole Bailey ends up doing the whole sleight of hand thing and ends up distracting Taskmaster long enough for Captain America to literally kick him right out of the aircraft. But like any twist story, the Taskmaster ends up getting the Adaptoid's arm and ends up making off to live to see another day. And of course I think this moment's really sweet. It's like Captain America ends up talking to Spider-Boy. Says it's always something like, with superpower, the spider power, there must also come super spider responsibility. Kind of butchering a little bit, but to each their own phrase, I suppose. And everything. It's like and then Captain America then says he appreciates your sacrifice. There was a time when I was a forgotten man. I was unfrozen and found myself in a world that had moved on without me. And I know what you're going through, so I promise, if you need anything, just say there and I'll be there for you. So I think this is actually pretty nice. If anyone knows what it's like to be a forgotten hero in a world that has long since moved on without him, it's definitely Captain America. And I think it's nice that he gets to connect with Spider-Boy. It's very wholesome, very nice little wholesome moment there. And in the epilogue, Christine ends up giving him a present directly from Santa with a picture of him and his mom. See? It's these little moments that make you realize that, hey, he is still a kid. And though he's still kind of brash, impulsive, semi-entitled, and whatever, it just goes to show that deep down, he's still a kid at heart. And kid at heart and physically. So, yeah. And then, of course, we're introduced to the newest villain of Spider-Boy's Rogues Gallery called Chillin, who pretty much looks like Mo the Stooge with Leonard Nimoy's hair. Hey, with a sweatshirt and everything. So it's kind of one of those new modern-day villains and stuff. But he calls him the Toy Soldier. Basically, a miniaturized version of the Super Adaptoid, but can transform into all the powers of the Avengers. So that's actually pretty cool. So while Bailey is pretty much just learning his way around the superhero scene, he ends up saving a woman and her cat. And you know what this thing does? He ends up charging her, tries to charge her like $20. And he's like, look, letting you off cheap. It's like, are you saying your life isn't worth $20? How about that cat? How much is she worth to you? Now, yeah, that does come off as a bit of an a-hole dick move, but then again, I mean, he is, how many superheroes have done it for free besides the majority of them? Besides, the only ones that actually do charge it are the heroes for hire, and that's when you know that you're going to be paying for them, and stuff like that, so yeah. And then Christine kind of swoops in and says, kidding, he was just kidding. He says, hey, maybe he's the kind who likes to eat. That's actually kind of, that is a little bit of an explanation for it. And, like, Bailey just wants to earn money and everything so that he can actually afford the food and clothes and jobs. I mean, I know he's a kid and he shouldn't have to go through this just yet until he's, like, 18 or something like that. But, hey, at least he's thinking ahead. So that's more than you can ever say. What in the world were you thinking? He goes, you can't just charge people for saving them. That's just plain wrong. He goes, yeah, I know. I'm providing a service. Cops and firefighters get paid to do their job, so why not me? I need it so I can buy things. When I got erased from reality and brought back, all my stuff was gone. That was my phone, and it got stolen just last Christmas. He's like, you could always ask my parents for money. He's like, I can't do that. Your family may have taken me in, but we all live in a homeless shelter. You guys are working and saving to get out of here. I get a job and help too, but I'm just a kid. So it's these kind of moments that show that believe it or not, in real life, there are kids that kind of have to, grow up fast and provide for the family. Whether their loved ones have either dead or have walked out on them, this kind of shit actually happens in real life. So it's so I mean the situations kind of may be fantastical and everything, but it's these kind of moments, these grounded moments that show that that Marvel situations do indeed take place in the real world. Then, of course, we get to see Bailey Briggs fighting the toy soldier, who has to fight, who literally has the power of all the Avengers. With Chillin, I have no idea what the kid's with Chillin's real name is, nor do I care to know otherwise. But toy soldier against him. Even tries to lift tiny Mjolnir, but to no avail. Then Bailey ends up doing the most awesome thing imaginable. Since he transformed into Thor, he tells Toy Soldier that he says, if there are anything like Thor's, there should be an inscription. And as we all know, this phrase is, whoever holds this hammer, if they be worthy, shall possess the power of Thor. So it's like, if you can hold the hammer, you deserve it. You're not just some random shoe thief, or someone who follows orders. There's something worthy deep inside you. See, this is the kind of stuff right here. Spidey Boy actually reasons and pleads with their minions and his villain's sense of morality, just like Spider-Man always does. So it's like you can definitely tell, like Miles, he's definitely worthy of the Spider-Boy mantle, just putting his own little spin on it. I mean, it is called creativity for a reason, you know. Chillin, of course, just tries to egg him on even further for his live stream and everything, but he says... But Toy Soldier refuses. He says, I now have free will. I have more than the power of the Avengers. I have their heart and soul as well. I will follow this villain no more. You, on the other hand, know right from wrong, and I would serve by your side while you fight the good fight. So it turns out, can you imagine a toy soldier being a kid's sidekick? A kid and his toy. Now that is an interesting novel idea. It's like Toy Story, but if the toys actually were alive. I do, if you would have me. Coolest toy in the world, but he knows but the toy would be swapping one master for another. So it's like he says, nah, that's not what I'm doing this. You be your own hero. Go out there and do some good. I will, and I swear it. Thank you, Spider-Boy. He says, I will seek out new adventures, find those in need, and help whenever I can, for I am the Toy Soldier, an army of one with the might of every Avenger. See, another supporting cast in Spider-Boy's supporting cast. Can you believe that? I mean, a kid with a toy soldier and a toy for a sidekick. I mean, doesn't that scream childhood innocence and wholesomeness? I rest my case. Then, of course, Chillin ends up just being a brat and all, and he says, "Give it a rest, Richie Rich. You've got other stuff to worry about, like how you live streamed all of this, including all your crimes. So you pretty much tied the rope and hung yourself with it." And of course, Chillin does the whole villains thing. Is like so pissed. Is like, I don't care how much it costs me. I'll make you pay for this. Yada yada yada. It's always the same with him. All right, reaching towards the end of this book. It's kind of a short book from this point. But the next story involves Thor fighting an Asgardian spider creature, which is pretty on par for the course for Thor. And everything. So Christine ends up having to guilt Spider-Boy into helping Thor. So he's like, oh, man, cute, Christine, real cute. So Thor ends up fighting this Asgardian spider. But guess what? Turns out Spider-Boy has this new secret superpower of transforming into his semi-monstrous form, and ends up being able to communicate. Actually, I mean, let's just take a moment for this. Spider-Boy can turn into a semi-monstrous form and actually communicate, like talk, hand to mano a mano with spiders. He can actually talk and communicate with spiders. You'll not be able to understand this, but he's like, thou speaks spider? He's like, yeah, I do. Asgardian spider? And he goes, I doth. So yeah, it definitely shows that he's even translates, saying that his name is Kalop. He's actually the pet of Ulik, the rock troll from Norheim. So it's like a basic lost pet thing. And of course we see the classic Ulik. He goes, who dare summon Ulik forth? He goes, Kalopsy! He's like, come to daddy, Amy. I missed you too. It's like, and Bailey says, this is adorable. It's like viral videos of soldiers coming home to their dogs. See, whoever says this kid is not relatable and everything clearly has not read the issues, is not reading the story close enough to understand. And of course, then the story pretty much ends off with a cliffhanger. Ends with a cliffhanger of Modern Monstrosity being able to seeing Bailey and decides now is the time to act. I mean, look at her, dude. She kind of now she looks even uglier somehow. You can tell the art style is kind of shifting a little bit. And of course, we see Spider-Man and Miles Morales taking on Clifton Shallot's Vulturians. For those of you who don't know, Clifton Shallot's a jaded high school teacher or maybe college professor or whatever. He's pretty much an academic professor who has a gang of vulture-like goons called the Vulturians. Spider-Boy tries to tries to join the fray, but Spider-Man kind of benches him and has Miles Morales join him because he's slightly older than him. Excuse me. Spider-Boy ends up feeling jealous of Miles Morales due to the fact of the age experience, but then again, that's pretty normal for a kid that's just new and everything. Spider-Boy ends up going college. Spider-Boy just he lashes out at Christine because he's just angry and all sorts of things. It's like acting on your friend, but you think he's a monster too. But it's like it just comes as a shock. It's like I've seen you monster out before, but it's like no big thing. Get out of here. And it's just call it Bailey just struggling to adjust with change and everything. It's not, and plus he's just a kid, so the thing's pretty normal. It's not condonable by any reason, but at least gives it some understanding. Oh, and then they end up joining going to the movies to see Fast Car Family X. I mean, you can tell that they're definitely ripping on the Fast and the Furious franchise, and it's like saying, Dirk, we don't have enough nitrous to clear this Sphinx. He goes, our cars don't need nitrous. They run on family. Oh, please. You can tell that the Fast and the Furious has now become a laughingstock after the certain movie. If you ask me, I'd say Fast and the Furious definitely should have ended after Paul Walker's death in the Fast and the Furious 7. I mean, they drove off into the sunset together. Dom got his happy ending, or so to speak. I've never really kept up with the Fast and the Furious, but at this point, they're just turning into car versions of the Avengers. It's like, it's one thing if they were completely different characters who fight using cars and stuff like that, but that's just kind of derailing their whole, legacy and stuff like that. So it's basically just Bailey ends up having an evil spider clone, as it seems, because you can tell by the reversed color scheme. Like, you can tell it's basically like Spider-Man, but without the web lining to it. Spider-Boy has a vision and has a vision of what's going wrong, and he decides to try and track down the creature. So he ends up speaking to this, and like Spider-Man to his clones, he reasons with the clone, tells him that the clone tells him he just wants to be like Bailey, and Bailey says, they're not going to understand you the way I do. So if you really want to make a difference on the world, just leave, so just leave right now, and hopefully he goes, thank you, brother. Yeah, I think it's just pretty damn good. And then Bailey ends up really reaching his breaking point and stuff like this. Neither of you took one night for my so-called friends just to see that I'm a monster. The world may have forgotten me, but I haven't. He said, I'm done being your sidekick. I'm part of your family, or feast, or nobody. He's like, the only person I'm looking out for is number one. You can call on. Of course, Bailey gets his friends and family back, but this is just a way of saying, call it Bailey struggling to adjust with this overwhelming amount of change. Well, I mean, all this on a kid, it's like, this is definitely a more sympathetic story and everything. Stuff like that. So yeah, we basically reached and so we've come to the end of the Spider-Man story. And here's one. This one is basically Spider-Boy trapped inside the tank with the Fantastic Four. It's kind of a live homage to Spider-Man's comic where he first met the Fantastic Four for the first time. So, as you can see, fellow viewers, the Spider-Boy is actually not as bad as people claim he is. Yeah, sure, his entrance was kind of a bit forced and everything, but after reading this story and reviewing and seeing some of the posts on Tumblr and everything, you kind of feel bad for the kid. You can tell that the writers are definitely having a lot of fun with him because he's a next-generational kid, a blank slate and template, for a writer to start peeling back the layers and everything. I mean, he is just a kid, but what kid wouldn't want to grow up to become a famous superhero? It's like, it's pretty much every kid's fantasy it's been like that since, the dawn of time. Even when I was growing up as a kid, even though kids that are growing up right now. Hell, kids in elementary school and middle school could pick up copies of this book right now and feel like they can see themselves in Spider-Boy the same way that their parents and grandparents were with Peter Parker back when he debuted in the 60s. So, I understand the hate this is getting for this. I think it's actually pretty nice. Plus, his costume is pretty decent and everything, and the artwork is actually starting to be pretty cool. So if you want to read more about Spider-Boy, feel free to pick up this copy of the Webless Wonder Origin Story 1 at your local comic book store and or on Amazon, or even better yet, Barnes & Noble, or just wherever comics are sold in general, I guess. So anyway, well, that's all the time I have for today, true believers. Tune in next time. For more exciting fun with I'm your host, Pirate Master Deadpool Supreme, saying until next time, true believers, Excelsior.